I'm getting ready to install Abalone Purfling along the top of this guitar. Obviously I've got all the bindings glued in place. This is Indian rosewood, by the way. It's kind of an unusual piece. But anyway, the bindings are glued in place, and where there's going to be abalone, I've got a strip of teflon. And what I'm going to do is first scrape everything flush to the soundboard, and then I'll pull out the strips of teflon and replace them with strips of abalone that are the same 47 thousandths of an inch wide. I've got the bindings mostly scraped down and sanded a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect right now because after I put in the abalone strips, I'm going to have to sand more to get those flush. So I'm gonna pull out some of the teflon, and I'm going to start at this pointy corner because that's going to be the hardest spot to work with. All of the purfling lines are mitered, and I want to do the same thing with the abalone. So it's very difficult to actually cut this stuff on a 50-degree angle. I find it generally works a lot better to just use a chisel. And I'll put my chisel down right at the corner, and that'll give me a pretty decent angle. It's not quite sharp enough, so cut it again. Okay, now I can lay this in there and then press it into place. Yes, of course, the strips of shell crumble and shatter with every press of the dowel, but that is one of the nice things about working with abalone. It covers up all those little breaks quite nicely, better than it would with mother of pearl. So now I'm going to do the other side of the corner. That is the formula for going all the way around. And after I get a, I don't know, 5 or 10 inch section inlaid, I use CA glue, really thin stuff, to hold everything in place. I don't know how they did this in the dark ages before CA glue was invented, I guess they would have used hide glue to anchor the shell. But this seems to work quite well in modern times. I want to glue it before I go very far because it's pretty easy to bump this stuff and knock it out of alignment. So now I don't have to worry about that section going anywhere. And I can move on to another segment. I know I've done another video about putting this stuff in, but when I show people this process when they're visiting my shop, they seem to really think it's pretty interesting. So I figured another video wouldn't hurt, and it's what I'm working on today, so there you go. If you use the really thin glue, it penetrates below the surface at all those little break points that get induced by pushing the shell into the channel. And just coming into the end now. This corner won't show because the fretboard will be over it. So there it is, the shell all the way around the body. I'm going to wait for the glue to dry everywhere, which only takes a few minutes, and then I'll do another pass with the glue. I'll just go over the whole thing again to make sure there are no gaps anywhere, and then once that dries I can start sanding. I can't really scrape because the shell just kind of pulverizes if I take a scraper to it, so I have to sand it to get it flush to the top. It's a little bit tricky sanding this because the shell is quite a bit harder than the spruce soundboard. So if I'm not careful with how I do this, I wind up sanding deeper into the spruce and having kind of an upward rim all the way around. So I really have to lean quite directly just on the shell. Okay, there it is, sanded to 150. I'll eventually go at least to 220, probably 320. Well, definitely 320 before I put the finish on it. But that's it for now. Feels nice and smooth. And I can move on to making the neck.